In the modern day, one of the most prevalent security concerns that is being faced by Poland is the fact that it has had a very lengthy negative relationship with Russia, which, as a result of the war in Ukraine, has only grown worse over time. Much of the good relationship that exists between the US and Poland is due to a lot of the similarities that they have in terms of their ideologies and their international interests, and these specifically relate to Russia. So many of the security issues that are currently plaguing Poland are very relevant to the US because the US does play a role in protecting NATO countries, and in the instance where Poland would face a security threat, US would also be forced to participate on the international stage and put themselves at the forefront of this conflict, even if they already have. But something that's very prevalent is the fact that a lot of people within Poland have not forgotten about the suffering that was endured during both World War II and during the Soviet Union. So that's kind of the reason why there is this overwhelming, cool relationship that Poland has towards Russia. Russia still interferes with the security of Poland, even despite them not having ownership over the country anymore. For example, they repeatedly violate airspace over Poland, which also reveals a lot of tension and risk. This overall has strengthened the relationship between US and Poland because Poland, in order to protect itself, has adopted many American military techniques and improved its relationship with its foreign forces. When Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Poland did take center stage, because there is this incredible fear in the minds of Polish people that, like Ukraine, their country will one day experience such a violent tragedy, which is why there's a huge pushback against Russian atrocities. Poland has been active in purchasing military weapons from the US for their own security, proving that Poland senses that its security may be at major risk in the future, as well as their belief that the US is a valuable ally militarily. Since the Cold War, the US has been entrenched in an ideological war that ceases to end. Following the invasion of Ukraine, the US has begun supplying weaponry to Ukraine as part of its defense, and many of these weapons have been utilizing channels that Poland provides. In the past, the US strongly supported Poland's ascension into NATO, and since 2014, US forces have expanded their military presence within Poland, and this includes the cooperation of joint task forces between the two armies. Polish reliance on US military technology has proved to be important in preserving their international security. Many Polish people feel unsafe about their proximity to war. For the time being, Poland has served as a valuable gateway for getting Western weapons into Ukraine, and the US government has much interest in the development of Polish militarily for their protection and for the future of Ukraine. Congress also is a staunch supporter of US forces being stationed in Poland as a long-planned strategy to deter Russian aggression. The Ukrainian war is vital towards maintaining US global power, and integral to this power is their relationship with Poland because it forms a coalition of other anti-Russian countries. So much of the interest in Poland from the US comes from a self-interest the US has in preserving its own identity and image. And since the Cold War, the US has put a front against Russia because they've always been a representation of things that are very un-American, such as anti-democratic behavior, disregard for sovereignty or freedom. These are things that America holds dear, and it is no secret this is why the US disregards much of Russian ideology publicly. The approach the US has taken towards Poland is very likely to succeed. The US offers security assistance to Poland during times of need, therefore fostering a positive relationship. The goal of the US remains to save face on the international front by creating strong alliances with countries that also have negative relationships with Russia. To this effect, they can serve as a preserver of freedom and democracy globally. Funds the US has pushed towards enhancing Polish military complexes will better protect the nation from receiving security threats from Russia, and the emphasis on NATO will also lead to more protection because Russia would not want to risk immense military retaliation. Biden has been continuously outspoken regarding Russian threats, which has created a sense of unity and trust with Poland. If Poland were to be invaded, relations with the US would only grow stronger, as the US would be forced to intervene to protect not only a NATO country, but to be put on a front as a preserver of democratic ideals. An increase in the security threats to Poland would prompt a swift military action from the US, as they've already stationed men overseas to be prepared for such an event. The invasion of Ukraine by Russia serves as a perfect representation of the type of anti-democratic conflict the US strives to fight against. Cooperation between Poland and the US is vital towards creating a coalition of countries bent on protecting the freedoms of countries in Eastern Europe whose democratic ideals have been threatened. For now, the failure of Russian troops in Ukraine, severe economic sanctions from the West, and the detrimental loss of key ammunition due to military support from the West will all be deterrents to a near-future invasion of Poland.